So according to the Apartheid Security Branch, Imam Abdullah Haron's death was a result of a trip down a flight of stairs. Since his detention and subsequent death in custody, the family of the Muslim cleric believes there was more to his death. 53 years after his death in a Cape Town police station, the Western Cape High Court has reopened an inquest into the incident. Natalie Malgas is standing by to speak to the Imam's son this morning. A very good morning to you, Natalie. Perhaps also just a brief history lesson in terms of who we're talking about.
Thanks so much, Judy. Yes, you're right. We are standing with Professor Imam Haron, one of the Imam's children, one of three of his children, two of whom took to the stand this week in the reopened inquest into the Imam's passing. The Imam was a political activist here in Cape Town, in the southern suburbs of Cape Town, and widely known not just for his Muslim teachings but his activism. He was a salesman by day, but really working under the radar to overthrow the apartheid regime, working hand in hand with other activists here in Cape Town, very well known in the city and across South Africa, dare I say, even the African continent, for his teachings, his work and his activism. The first question I really have for Professor Imam Haron, who took to the stand earlier this week. Prof, how is the family feeling, reflecting on the week that was and also the years that brought us to the reopened inquest that we're hearing in the Western Cape High Court now?
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I think, let me start with your last question. That is, I think the years that had been remained traumatic. It never sort of left our minds and our feelings towards the state dragging the case. In other words, we would like our democratic state to have responded almost immediately after the TRC had completed its task. But be that as it may, I think now we have, with the reopening of the inquest, it basically put some solace in our hearts. In other words, when we heard the Judge Dolare, in terms of his responses, we heard the testimony of the aeronautical engineer, Mr. Moodley, as well as the two pathologists, Dr. Molefe as well as Dr. Naidu. I think both of them really highlighted and demonstrated that the inquest report of 1970 is what I had said in my conclusion, say highly questionable. And they basically reaffirmed that through their own responses to the findings then.
Do you feel vindicated? The family had almost from the very beginning said there was something more to it, to the passing of the Imam, and to now hear the expert opinions of the aeronautical engineer and the pathologists agreeing with you and disputing the official findings from 1970. Does that feel like vindication?
Well, in a sense it does. I think, and I am in a sense hopeful that individuals such as these, expertise such as these, can even assist other families too. I think we all are in the same boat, so to speak. I mean, their family members and our father basically having been killed, having been maimed, having been tortured. I think, yeah, these experts basically who were not there but who were able to pick out issues that they thought they could paper over, and now the truth is there for all to see. So yes, in a sense we are.
Prof, did you take much convincing to testify? You were a young boy, 12 going on 13, when your father was detained. Did it take some convincing for you to participate in this inquest?
Well, in this one, yes. I think, as I had said even before, I was personally cynical towards our state. I have been, continued to be, so to speak, up to a particular point in time. But when we were approached through Judge Shiraz Desai and Yasmin Suka and others who basically have been fighting their battles with the state to open up, I think we, in a sense, my sisters and I, we basically agreed, let's go for it. Why should we? Because it's not just for us. I think we also see it for other cases as well. So, in a sense, because the victims against Apartheid Family Group basically stand together, and we're here to support the Timor case and other cases as well, Biko case, because we just feel that we have similar pains experience differently, but we share commonalities.
Why do you feel this process has taken so long? I remember at the launch of the Imam Haron Foundation back in 2019, there were family members of the other cases that you spoke of, where relatives' deaths and disappearance has gone unanswered for many years. Why has it taken so long for the National Prosecuting Authority and essentially the state to pay attention to this and reopen a hearing like this and do the same for other families?
Well, our reading and understanding of our own social history is that the sunset clauses, before we even became a democracy, had something to do with it. The issue of amnesty had much to do with it. The issue of political interference added to the pains that we already had. So in a sense, it's a collective number of facts that contributed to us. And that is part of the reason why we have been so cynical. I mean, we question the intentions, the really interests of certain, again, we cannot sort of paint everybody with the same brush. There have been individuals within the system who made as if they're Democrats, but they were basically helping to cover up for those who were the real criminals. And of course, the mere fact that Speaker van Wyk and Major Genis are no more around, they died, is one sort of indication that we cannot bring anybody to book. And for that reason, in my statement, as you might have heard, that for me, in a posthumous occasion, like we give we give somebody an honorary doctorate for his or her contribution posthumously, why don't we strip these people of their beings as non-entities in our society? They shouldn't be part of our history. Those who sacrifice their life should be written into history as being the individuals who sacrifice, have been selfless, and have been dedicated to really bring about the change.
Having said that, Prof, what are the ideal outcomes? On a practical note, what would you like to see happen when this hearing is ultimately concluded?
Well, personally, I would like to see all other cases be opened. I mean, that is one of the ideal that one has, because after all, we are in a group, as we already said, along with others. Two is that I think the textbooks, here we talk about education, where at least scholars need to write into history these individuals, give not just a brief background, but the rationale for them having sacrificed and having committed themselves to the cycle. And thirdly, perhaps, maybe just as part of that, our culture must be that we should basically see to it that we do not commit those same crimes to our fellow human beings the way these people did towards our sort of dear ones.
This is a big moment in South African history, really going through and quite literally retracing the steps of deceased loved ones. How is the family dealing with those raw emotions? Was it an incredibly emotional moment, walking through, doing that in loco inspection in the police station, and that when you reflect on relatives who, due to ill health, aren't able to participate in the inquest, and when you think of your mother who so badly wanted justice but passed away too soon to see this moment? Right. How is the family reflecting on all of that?
Well, of course it was an emotional roller coaster, so to speak, just to return. In fact, in our case, my siblings and I, we went with our families. We went to Maitland a few years ago. So in a sense, we were able to witness the sort of place where he was kept and where he had been killed. But I think the first time that we had a tour of Caledon Square, what was then known as Caledon Square. So yes, indeed, it was very much of a painful sort of recollection of our lives. I think for those of us who could recall parts of it, I think it was sort of internally, it's difficult to explain, difficult to express in words as to the way we felt. And those who were involved, like my mum, I mean, we had hoped that at least something would have come up even before she had closed her eyes. That was not to be. So I think in terms of what has been happening now, in terms of the way the Judge Solari responds and sort of leads the way, I think she would have been like us, the idea of hope is basically there, the idea of changing the history is there, the idea of really making an important statement basically comes across very powerfully.
Thank you very much, Prof. Haron there, Dudu. Speaking of all the emotions from this week as the inquest was reopened in the Western Cape High Court in the coming days, we'll hear from more experts. In fact, we'll also hear testimony from a young policeman at the time who will be reflecting on the last time he saw the Imam alive in a Cape Town police station in 1969.
Natalie, Malgas, thank you very much for that update.